The Democratic Alliance's motion of no confidence in cabinet has been defeated in the National Assembly. The first ever motion of no confidence in the South African cabinet was defeated by 231 votes to 131 with one abstention. And earlier, the ATM's motion of no confidence in President Cyril Ramaphosa failed to get off the ground when the ATM refused to go ahead with it. A political analyst, Khanyi Magubane, joins us now virtually for some analysis on these developments. Khanyi, good to see you. Good morning. Welcome to Morning Live.
A very good morning to you and your viewers, Sakina.
So, Khanyi, very interesting developments yesterday, but let's just take a look at, firstly, the ATM, their withdrawal of that motion and not to participate as they insisted on a secret ballot. What did you make of all of that, and also what this meant for the ANC in that particular dynamic?
Well, first of all, Sakina, there was an overall feeling that there was a missed opportunity from the ATM to go for the motion because the Speaker, Ms. Mapisa Ngakula, was actually willing to go ahead with that motion because she was advised by the Legal Department of Parliament that the matter was no longer sub judice because it was struck off the roll for urgent matters. And I think that the thinking of the ATM is that they stand a better chance to win the next motion of no confidence if there is a secret ballot, because when they vote via roll call, which is what ultimately happened yesterday for the DA's motion of confidence, that of course we know if everybody has access to see which way you're voting, you're going to be swayed, you're going to vote under duress. So I think that was the main factor that contributed to the ATM refusing to move on the matter, because that is the actual reason why the motion was not heard, because the ATM refuses to go ahead until this matter has been resolved in the courts. And how long that will take, only one can tell, because if a matter is no longer urgent and is now put on the ordinary court roll, it could be weeks and even months before it's even heard, which works in their favor.
Now, Khanyi, the DA did express their position. They said that they were pleased that the Speaker acceded to that request by DA leader John Steenhuisen for a roll call voting procedure. So, of what significance, was that in the broader scheme of things, where the DA's motion was against cabinet, but they seem to be happy with President Ramaphosa, but not his cabinet?
Right. So there's two types of motions of confidence, as we've seen, according to Section 102.2 of the Constitution, that actually dictates how this happens. What John Steenhuisen alluded to in his address is that there had been a complete breakdown in trust in the current cabinet, that the current cabinet had been tainted. He painted a picture of a number of ministers that had been implicated in high levels of corruption, whether you're talking state capture, Busasa, whether you're talking about any other commissions that have been had in South Africa over the past 24 months. You've had members of cabinet who've been implicated, and he's saying it's time for a clean sweep. And so this was the first time that Parliament was actually voting in this manner and actually using its rule book beyond the normal levels of comfort. And you could tell that the Speaker was uncomfortable, but she had to do it. It was new territory for them, and I think that it's a signal of a growing democracy to say that when MPs are pressed, which way do they go? And it also exposed a lot of fear for me when I saw a number of MPs. In fact, all the ANC MPs, kept on saying no, 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 as they were called. But the question is, if that was a secret ballot, would that yes not have turned in? Will that no not have turned into a yes? I guess for this round, seeing that the DA has already lost this motion, we'll never know. But it definitely tested the effectiveness of the rules of Parliament. It tested how well Parliament is able to implement its own rules. And it was actually very interesting to watch because it's a growth of our democracy. It was happening for the first time in Parliament.
Now, just to stay with that for a moment, the EFF saying that the DA motion against cabinet and not against President Ramaphosa does not imply that Ramaphosa is any different from the rest of his cabinet. Why do you think the DA tabled the motion in the manner in which they did? No confidence in cabinet, only, but they seem to have much greater confidence in the ability of President Ramaphosa to steer the ship?
I don't think it's a greater confidence. I think that the DA is thinking about what's easiest to implement, because remember, if the president is removed through a motion of no confidence, then automatically the entire cabinet is dissolved, by extension. I think that what the Democratic Alliance is saying is that the president is surrounded by people who are intent on sabotaging his administration, and that the president will actually do well to remove those members. I think the DA, to a certain extent, has faith in the president's business background. He comes from corporate, he comes from the business sector, which John Steenhuisen spoke very, well of. He said that in the private sector, there is results. In the private sector, people are driven by excellence, which is what is needed. And so what I'm hearing is a greater call to stop appointing political deployees to ministerial positions, and to also trim the entire cabinet and start looking outside the political camps for those ministers. I think that is ultimately where the DA is trying to take this.
Isn't that ironic, though? Because if you think about it, it's ambiguous. The IFP, for example, Khanyi, saying that cabinet, of course, as we know, serves at the behest of the president. So if members of the cabinet are failing in their duties and they are still allowed to remain in their position, surely that reflects on the president.
It does reflect on the president, and it also reflects on the current politics of our time, because the people that are appointed, to the different cabinet positions are not only just pinpointed by the president. There's an extensive consultation process that happens beforehand within the party. And you may find that what ultimately happens is that the wish of the majority is actually what happens, not so much what the president's personal choice is. So this is also a sign of the president's diplomatic, way of being swayed. I don't think that Ramaphosa's cabinet is really reflective of the people he would have personally chosen, but is reflective of who the ANC has chosen, because the president himself of the political party, he has been sent to government to go and the policies of the ANC, and should he fail in that, the ANC itself can recall the president. So I don't think that it's exclusively reflective of the president, but on a grander scale, the ANC's inability to put forward candidates that have actually been the best candidates for the job.
And just a final one, Khanyi, the question of the bloated cabinet also came up, and the number of cabinet ministers and the expense that this brings up, that came up very sharply, with comparisons being made in relation to what's happening in other countries, as an example, and also the questioning of the role of deputy ministers, and in some instances 2 deputy ministers per ministry. So the president, you would remember, initially was saying that he was going to reduce that cabinet, to cut the fat, as it will. But why do you think he went the same route, though, and was unable to trim?
I think, once again, some things are beyond the president, as much as he is the first citizen of this country. I do think that the current cabinet is quite big, and I think that the move to trim the government would actually require a much longer process than just sitting at the table and saying, you're in, you're out, you're in, you're out. If we are doing away with a particular minister, what happens to the ministry that represents them? And this is where we've seen the merging of ministries. You can remember how the Ministry of Sports and Arts and Culture were once 2 different ministries, and they were merged, and they were later separated, and they've been brought back again. That's just one example that we can paint of departments that have been merged. And I think that currently government needs to relook its entire structure in terms of the different ministries and the roles that they play. And then we look at which ministries can be merged and which ministries can be absorbed under more powerful or bigger ministries or bigger portfolios. I think that will certainly start going a long way in reducing the amount of cabinet ministers that we have.
Khanyi Magubane, thanks so much for your time. Political analyst Khanyi Magubane discussing the outcomes of Parliament's proceedings yesterday with regard to the two motions of no confidence. The ATM's motion was postponed, while the motion of no confidence tabled by the DA against Cabinet that was defeated.